is just outrageous. Where has he been?
Yeah.
Has he not looked at what is going on in spending in the past few years?
You're right about all that, but those political comments, but they work.
What?
The last few days, you'd be shocked to learn, maybe you would not. I'm getting email from Democrats and other people who are absolutely convinced that bond rating downsizing was that talking point is resonating, and people are blaming the Tea Party for this. They really are.
Standard & Poor's last April said that if in fact we didn't have at least $4 trillion of cuts over the next 10 years, they were going to downgrade our rate.
Agreed, but they're not listening to Standard & Poor's because that's hard work and that requires a study. They're listening to the talking points.
But how could it be a surprise if in fact we only did about half of what they said was needed, then they downgrade our credit? I mean, is this a shock? Did the Tea Party get a hold of Standard & Poor or something? I mean, it's just irrational.
I was listening to Bob Eckel yesterday, who suggested that was exactly the case. He's one of the talking heads, the Democratic talking heads, who suggested this was the business class ganging up on Obama.
I mean, how can you comment on a statement like that? This is the fact of the matter is we're going to be $1.65 trillion more in debt this year than what we were last year. 42 cents of every dollar the federal government spends this year will be borrowed money, asking our kids and our grandchildren to pay it back.
I'm not going to ask them. I'm going to demand it.
Well, we're going to be like Greece owned by China, and that's what's going to happen if, in fact, people don't step up and say enough is enough.
All right.
We've got to take the tough votes. We've got to do the right thing.
All right. We're going to invite Iowans into this conversation. Congressman Tom Latham is here in the studio with us, and he's inviting Iowans to step up and demand these things. Iowans, you're listening. Are you going to stand up and demand these things, and of whom? 284-1040 or 800-469-4295. Back in a moment. In studio with us, we're talking with Congressman Tom Latham. And he is, again, joined a chorus of people saying that the system is not sustainable and we're going to have to fix it, and we can't just use political speak. Well, can I just hijack part of a conversation with you here for just to be annoying? Where in the Congress did you sit relative to Barney Frank? Where would he sit? How close to you does he sit?
Well, we don't have assigned seating in the House of Representatives.
Oh, you don't?
No.
I didn't know that.
No, in the Senate
it's first come, first served?
Wherever you sit. Generally, if you were the Speaker looking out over the floor of the House, the Democrats would sit to the right, Republicans would sit to the left, but people sit all over the place.
Well, then I totally wasted that really nasty note then. Assuming that was your desk. Well, anyway.
It would be fair to assume we probably don't sit together a lot.
I would just wonder, because there was a hygiene issue that came up. There was he was on MSNBC the other night, and I'm going to play the soundbite. Okay. There's two different levels. There's the content of the soundbite that I'm going to ask you to comment, and then on there was an environmental part of the soundbite.
We have to figure out, all right, what do we do from here? And you're right. We've got to get some jobs, and we have to deal with the debt, and there's one way to do it.
That was not a whoopee cushion. That was Barney.
We have to figure out, all right, what do we do from here? And you're right. We've got to get some jobs, and we have to deal with the debt, and there's one way to do it. We are today spending $140 billion a year, approximately, on Afghanistan and Iraq to no good purpose.
Apparently, he was clearing his throat or another orifice, and it went off. And but the other part is the defense spending issue, because he says he's going to hammer on that. And the cure to fixing the budget problems is to limit defense spending. And if you did that, would that even come close to addressing the debt and the red ink?
If we did away with the Defense Department today, about $600 billion, we would still be this year $1 trillion in deficit. So, I mean, that kind of speak has no relevance to what the situation is. We have a systemic long-term problem. We have to look across the entire federal government for savings to reduce the size and scope of the government. But yeah, like I said, you'd still be $1 trillion in deficit this year if you did away with the Defense Department.
So he's that's just a tactic, but to some degree it'll work, won't it?
Well, I mean, there's also an issue. The Constitution says that the federal government's charged with defending this country. And to look at defense basically only as he's talking about would be the wrong thing to do. Now, I'm not going to ever say that there isn't waste in the Defense Department, because I think everyone knows differently. But what we've got to do is an evaluation across the entire federal government and see where we can, in fact, save money. That's why, I don't know if you're aware, Jan, that I'm the author of the Less Government Act, which is Lean Six Sigma, to actually apply what has worked in the private sector to the federal government so that you have efficiency, you have savings. It's estimated there's 20 to 25% waste in the federal government today, whether it be waste, fraud, abuse, and the only way you're ever going to get at that is to have a system in place where each agency, where each department is accountable, has to report as to what they're doing to counteract the waste, and that's exactly what this bill does. And so, that's the way we need to approach it. We need to deliver services that the federal government has to do, but do it in an efficient way, one that is not a wasteful bureaucracy, one that actually provides services to the citizens.
Let's talk to as many people as we can, and this is Monty. You're talking with Congressman Tom Latham. Good morning, sir.
Yeah, hey, Jen, thanks for having him on, and also thank you, Congressman, for coming on board.
Sure.
This is nice to be able to talk to you directly instead of through a staff personnel, so...
what you're saying is you usually get shunted away in the staff. You can't get past the screening process, is what you're saying.
Right, and then I get a form letter.
Yeah.
Anyway.
I feel your pain.
I've got kind of a comment question.
Okay.
A comment, and I ask this of all the House members every time I see them until I get an answer. I'm curious. You guys drafted this bill originally. It did not raise the limit on the debt limit. Then, for some reason, Obama said he would not sign this, so you guys scrapped it and went back to the drawing board. It's almost as if you went to an auction and you ran up your own bid. Why did you guys have to do anything? And my question is simply this, and if this is the leadership out of John Boehner, maybe he needs to be replaced.
Yeah.
All right. Hey, thank you, Monty.
Well, let's start from the beginning. I mean, the president early this year asked for $2.4 trillion increase in the debt limit with no reform anywhere. And that's where it all started out. Speaker Boehner went to the Economic Club in New York and basically made a speech saying we're not going to raise the debt limit without at least equal cuts. They negotiated originally, the president and Speaker Boehner, about a $4 trillion deal that would have actually made Standard & Poor's, and a lot of people believe that we were on the right track as far as cutting spending in Washington. The president, after basically agreeing to that, apparently, I don't know whether it's campaign people or somebody got a hold of him and said, no, we've got to raise taxes. That was not acceptable, and basically the negotiations down to the last couple weeks, the speaker finally could not deal with the White House because, as he said, it was like dealing with Jell-O. You couldn't ever have them put anything on paper. They never made a proposal. The president never put anything down. Was nothing that you could score to figure out exactly what they were talking about. And so we ended up basically negotiating with the Senate, and then finally the president came along. But that's what happened. I voted against this deal, but just on principle that it did not do what it needed to be done, and that would be at least a $4 trillion cut. And let's remember, according to the president's budget that he proposed last February, cutting $4 trillion over the next 10 years would still add $6 trillion to our national debt. I mean, it's a down payment as to what actually has to be done, and we're going forward. assuming that interest rates would stay where they are, we would be talking in 10 years of every dime paid by taxpayers, income tax would be paid to the federal government, would go to interest only on the debt. And that's assuming current interest rates. And if anybody believes interest rates are going to stay where they are today to service our national debt, I don't think they've seen history.
Well, a brief time out here for our farm markets in just a second, but Bernanke announced yesterday that he's going to hold interest rates at zero.
Yeah.
That's a subsidized interest rate, obviously, but he's going to. But does he have a choice? And can he affect?
No. In essence, what he is doing is stating the obvious, that because of the policies of this administration, the anti-growth, anti-private sector, high taxes, high regulations, that this economy is going to be stuck in neutral for at least 2 more years, and that's why he said that yesterday, that we're going to drag this out 2 more years because of the policies today put in place by this administration are going to kill any kind of hope for growth.
Right after our farm markets, Tom Latham is accepting your calls, 284-1040 or 800-469-4295 in a moment. Back to the conversation. Congressman Tom Latham is here in the studio. We just found out just moments ago. House Speaker John Boehner has named GOP Representative Jeb Hensarling, that he's from Texas, co-chair of the new committee that we were talking about earlier. Also named Representative Dave Camp and Fred Upton. Both of those guys are from Michigan. Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell has named Senators Kyle of Arizona, Pat Toomey of Pennsylvania, and Rob Portman of Ohio. So that's your side of the team.
Yep.
So is that a good team?
I think so. There's every one of them are strong. Jeb is the Republican Conference chairman, former president or chairman of the RSC, the Republican Study Committee. Very good conservative. Dave Camp is the chairman of Ways and Means. Fred Upton is the chairman of Energy and Commerce.
Are any of those guys ideologues or Tea Party types?
Jeb certainly would be considered to be one of the most conservative members of Congress. On the Senate side, certainly with Toomey on that would be
fairly conservative fellow.
Standout, absolutely. And Kyle also.
So you have on the Democratic side, you have Patty Murray, you have Senator Kerry, and I can't remember the other one. Baucus. And they haven't. We don't know about the congressional appointments.
I have not heard about it on the House side.
So this is going to be interesting.
Yep.
So apparently Boehner doesn't like you anymore. I thought you were one of his buddies. What did you say? What did you do?
He's probably, if that were the case, it's probably just to keep me off of the committee, if you're trying to do me a favor. But,
all right. This is Jack. You're talking with Congressman Latham. Good morning. Jack?
Good morning. How are you this morning?
Great.
Hi, Jack.
How you doing?
Good.
Thank you for being there.
You bet.
I'd like to just suggest maybe that the Congress and the Senate would just take a 20% cut across the board, operating expenses and wages, and also that they might consider joining the rest of us in the insurance industry the way we do, finding our own policies and or with Medicare.
Mm-hmm. And I appreciate that very much. We have actually, the Appropriations Committee cut our budget 9% last year. We'll have cuts again this year, considerably, 5 to 6% on top of that. The members' representational accounts are going to be reduced. I believe it's about 6.5–7% this year. And that's on top of what we cut last year was 5% off of the individual members' expenses. So, in fact, we are doing what you're saying, probably not to the 20%, but compound what we've done. It certainly does get to that point. As far as, the Medicare, I pay into Social Security. I pay into Medicare the same as anybody else does, the same as any other federal employee does. My health insurance is a Blue Cross Blue Shield policy. It's one on a whole menu of policies that every federal employee is allowed to choose from. I pay about $431, I believe it was, a month for my health insurance to the federal government. So, we are, in fact, fact, the same as any other federal employee. There's a lot of misinformation out there as to special things that members of Congress get, but we pay into Social Security, Medicare, and we pay into our health care also. Now, and I'm not saying, I'm just very pleased for my wife and I. If we can get by with $430 a month, that's a pretty good deal.
That's a pretty tremendous deal.
Absolutely.
But,
hey, thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
We had Ron Paul on, and he talked about actually opting out of that plan, and that there is only 2 representatives that actually opt out of that plan. Why isn't that something that